Everyone, to this lecture on order by. You may have noticed that PostgreSQL sometimes returns the same request query results in a different order, meaning you may have run the exact same query on your computer and saw the results in a slightly different order than what I have on my computer. So, in order to alleviate this issue if we want the results in a certain order, we can use the order by to sort rows based on a column value in either ascending or descending order. So that would be alphabetical for string-based columns or numerical order for numeric columns. The basic syntax for an order by statement would be as follows. We select whatever columns we want from the table, and then we decide to order by a specific column. And then optionally, you can add in ASC or DESC, whether you want that ordering or sorting to be ascending or descending. Notice the order by towards the end of the query, since we want to do any selection and filtering first before finally sorting. So that means order by is going to be towards the bottom of a query and one of the very last things that SQL actually performs. So we're going to do all our selection, all our filtering. If we use a where statement, that should come before the order by, and then right at the end we'll go ahead and do any sorting. And you use ASC to sort in ascending order, DESC to sort in descending order. If you leave it blank, order by just uses ascending by default. Now what's also interesting is you can use order by on multiple columns. So this makes sense when one column has duplicate entries. Let's take a look at this example database or example table really. We have 3 columns here, company, name, and the sales for that individual at that company. Notice here that we have duplicate entries under company. So if we were to actually order by 2 columns here, we could select the company column, the name column, and the sales column in that order from this table, and then we order by company and then order by sales. What does that actually mean? Well, it means we sort everything first based off the company column. So notice we have Apple coming in first in alphabetical order, then Google, and then Xerox. And then the corresponding names also get lined up. However, we can then also order by the sales. So after you've done the sorting based off the company column, which makes sense because there's duplicate values there, within that particular company, we do a second ordering, which is by the sales column. So note the sales now is in an ascending order for each individual within the same company. So we see Andrew with 100, and then Zach with 300. And then for Google, we see Claire with 200, and then David with 500. So if you have duplicate values in a particular column, and you want to sort not just by that particular column, but another column as well, it makes sense to do an order by with multiple columns. And it's going to sort based off the order you provide. So it'll order by company first, and then by sales. Let's go ahead and explore some more examples in pgadmin on the DVD rental database. Okay, here I am inside of pgadmin. What I'm going to do is explore the customer table. So we will say select, and let's select just everything from the customer table so we can take a quick look at what the results look like here. So notice we have this customer ID, and more or less it seems to be in order except for this first one, which is 524, and then we also have the first name and last name. Let's see if we can order everything based off the first name of the user. So that would be an alphabetical order based off first name. So what we do here is, towards the bottom, we'll say order by, and then we decide on the column. So we'll say order by first name. If I don't leave anything here and just run this, it'll automatically order it here in ascending order, so starting at A all the way down. So then if you start going more and more down, you'll eventually see B's and then C's. This is the same as if I had clarified ascending order. So you may be wondering why bother clarifying ascending order there. Well, it's nice because if you come back to read this or someone else is reading your code, you can realize that they specifically wanted it in ascending order. We can do the same for descending order by adding in DESC towards the end of this order by statement. And now notice we're starting at Zachary, then Yvonne, Yolanda, and going down. So we're starting at Z and then going down all the way to A. Now notice here that we have different store IDs, and we also have duplicate store IDs. So we have store ID 1, store ID 2, and store ID shows up multiple times. So we have multiple entries for store ID, which basically means that this particular customer, let's say Zachary Height, goes to store ID number 1. And this second customer, Yvonne Watkins, goes to store ID number 2. So there's Yolanda, Wilma, etc. What we could do is first order by the store ID to get all the results per store, and then organize it by first name. So the way this would work is I would say first order by store ID, and if I just run this by itself, notice now I get store ID 1 first, and then if I were to continue scrolling here, this may be a couple thousand, so it might be hard to actually see this, but then I eventually get store ID number 2. And then within this, you'll notice that if we scroll back up here, I'm actually just going to select store ID, first name, and last name columns. So let's reduce this a little bit. We'll say select the store ID column, select the first name column, and select the last name column. Run this. So if we take a look at this, the store ID is now sorted starting at 1, and then eventually you scroll down, you'll see store number 2, but the actual entries themselves are in no particular order within store ID. So what I could do is say first order by store ID, which makes sense because there's duplicate values in that particular column, and then go ahead and order by first name. So after you order by the store ID, go ahead and order by first name, run that, and here we can now see store ID number 1, then everything starting in alphabetical order based off the first name, and then we scroll down here to eventually hit store ID number 2, and we can see within store ID number 2, all the first names are now in alphabetical order, starting with A. And if you want, you can always add in ascending and descending to each particular order by statement. So I could say order the store ID on descending while ordering based off first name on ascending. And notice here, it's semicolon is optional. So we run this, and now at the very top, we're starting at store ID number 2, and then seeing the alphabetical order, Aaron, etc. And then eventually, if I scroll down far enough, I would see store ID number 1. The other thing to note here is that if I select just first name and last name and run this, it will still work, which means I can technically sort by columns that I do not actually request in my select statement. Now, whether or not you actually want to do that in a real-world setting is really up to you. Typically, it would make sense to actually select the column you're ordering by because that just logically looks better as a result, and it'll kind of continue the logic of your SQL query into your results, and you'll understand whatever the person was trying to explore from a business standpoint. But I do want you to be aware of the fact that you can technically order by a column and not select it in your select statement if for some reason you want to do that. Okay, that's it for the order by lecture. Coming up next, we're going to quickly discuss a limit function, which allows us to actually limit the amount of rows that are returned in a query, and then we'll give you some challenges for the order by statement in conjunction with the limit statement. I'll see you at the next lecture. Welcome back, everyone, to this lecture discussion on the limit keyword. The limit command allows us to limit the number of rows returned for a query. It's useful for not wanting to return every single row in a table, but only view maybe the top few rows to get an idea of the table layout. Limit also becomes extremely useful in combination with the order by statement that we just learned about. Limit goes at the very bottom end of a query request and is the last command to be executed, because essentially what the limit does is after you're done filtering with the where statement, ordering with order by, and sorting, and any other sort of conditions or any filters you want to do on your query, the limit is just going to say, all right, how many rows do you want at the end of the day? So let's learn the basic syntax of limit through some examples. This should be pretty straightforward, and you should really be thinking about this in conjunction with order by in order to answer certain business questions. Let's jump over to pgadmin. Okay, here we are in pgadmin. Let's go ahead and explore this payment table again. First, what we could do is just select everything from the payment table. So I can say select everything from payment, and I get this variety of payment IDs, customer IDs, staff ID, rental ID, etc. And then I also get a payment date, which is a timestamp without a time zone, essentially just a day and then the hour, minute, and then second and milliseconds where this payment actually occurred. What we could do is order by this payment date in order to see either the oldest payments or the most recent payments. So what I can do is say select everything from payment and then say order by payment date. And if we run this on a timestamp, what's going to happen if we refresh this? Notice we get 2007-02-14. So this is in American formatting, meaning it's year, month, and then day. And if I want, I can either order this by default ascending to get 2007, 2, and then 14, or I could say descending, run this, and I see 2007, 5, 14, essentially 14th of May instead of 14th of February. So what this actually means is I can use order by in conjunction with limit to get the top n rows of something. So for example, I could answer the business question, what were the 10 most recent purchases in the payment table? So after I conduct my order by, I call in the limit keyword and then provide how many rows do I actually want. So if I just say 5, you'll notice here that right now it's returning everything if I scroll down here. If I say 5, run this, I keep scrolling down, but I only get 5 rows. So essentially what this answers is what were the 5 most recent rows or payments based off the payment date. So we can see the payment date here, and right now we're returning the 5 most recent payments. So this will allow you to get the top n of anything based off some column. So what we do here is just order by some column and then limit it to the top n results that we want. And it's up to you whether you want to do ascending or descending, depending on the actual data type that we're looking at. So we can see here, in fact, some of these payment amounts were zeros. So what I could end up doing is also filtering it where the amount isn't 0. So we can start to get really nice complex queries here. So I can say select everything from the payment table, saying select all the columns from this payment table. And then right here, we're limiting it to the top 5 most recent ones based off payment date in descending order. So starting from most recent, descending to the historical data. And I could also then say where amount is not equal to 0. So we run this, and now I can see the 5 most recent payments where there was actually a monetary transaction and it wasn't just a $0 amount. So this is where we start to see much more realistic SQL queries. Given just the few commands we know, we can already answer lots of business questions. We can, in this case, select everything from the most 5 recent payments where the amount wasn't 0. All right, so hopefully that gives you an idea of the power of limit. And sometimes if you want, you can simply do something like select everything from payment limit 1 to just quickly get an idea of what this table actually looks like. This would show you what data types there are, such as integers, small integers, timestamps, etc., and an example of what these actually look like. So some people like to quickly run this sort of command in order to just see the general layout of a table. Okay, so that's it for this lecture on limit. It's a pretty straightforward thing. Limit just comes at the end, and you can limit the number of rows returned. Very useful in conjunction with order by. So let's test your skills in the next lecture where we talk about some order by challenges. I'll see you there. Welcome back everyone to your set of challenge tasks regarding order by as well as the limit statement. So we'll start off by giving you the challenge task or business situation, then we'll go on to the expected result, the hints, and then the solution. So your first challenge task, we want to reward our first 10 paying customers. So the question is, what are the customer IDs of the first 10 customers who ever created a payment? Up next is the expected result. So the expected result are these 10 customer IDs. Here comes some hints. So the hints is to use the payment table, and you will need to use both order by and limit. And remember, you may need to specify ascending or descending on the actual payment date column. Here comes the solution. So the solution is to select the customer ID column from the payment table, and then you're going to order by payment date in ascending order. And if you want, you can just leave the ascending out of it because that is by default. And then the limit is 10. All right, let's move on to your second challenge. So the next challenge task is a customer wants to quickly rent a video to watch over their short lunch break. What are the titles of the 5 shortest, that is in length of runtime, movies? Okay, here comes the expected result. So the expected result are these 5 movies, and if you want, you can see the actual length of those movies is 46 minutes each. So you should get these 5 titles. Here comes some hints. So the hint is to use the film table and then take a look at the length column, and you can use order by and limit, and then remember you can use ascending or descending to get desired results. Here comes the solution. The solution is to select title and length, or just the title, since the question didn't really ask for the length of the films, from film and then order by length ascending limit 5. Now I want to quickly jump to pgadmin to show you something regarding this query. So something I want to point out here is if we actually run this query of selecting title length from film order by length ascending limit 5, there's two things to notice here. One is that length is also highlighted, basically telling you later on we're going to discover that length itself is actually a SQL keyword, so we want to be careful on the way we use it. In this case, it'll work fine if we run this because it is a column name inside of this table. But something to keep in mind is you should try your best to avoid column names that match up with SQL keywords, and pgadmin alerts you to this with this highlighting. Now, one way to just make it clear whether or not you're using a column name or a keyword is the capitalization. So from the capitalization, it's quite clear that length here is a column name and not a SQL command. The other thing to note here is I actually don't know for sure if there's more movies that have a longer or the same runtime. So notice here are the 5 movies that PostgreSQL returned that are ordered by length in ascending order. So here are the 5 shortest movies, 46 minutes each, but there actually could be a 6, 7, 8, 9, etc. more movies that also have 46 minutes in length. So we don't actually know for sure if these are just the 5 shortest movies. We could have more. And what we could do is keep expanding on this limit, and then eventually we would see that the next limit in length has been reached, 47 minutes. So it's by coincidence that there's only 5 movies with the shortest runtime of 46 minutes. But just saying limit by 5 doesn't actually guarantee you that there's only 5 movies here with the shortest runtime. So keep in mind of that sort of issue that may arise when you're trying to solve a question like this. Okay, and finally, let's give you a quick bonus question. So here's a quick bonus question, no hints or anything for this one, just quickly. If that previous customer can watch any movie that is 50 minutes or less in runtime, how many options does she or he have? Keep in mind, you may actually not even need order by for this. So again, we're just asking how many movies can that customer watch that are 50 minutes or less in runtime? The expected result is 37 movies. And hopefully you can recall back to your select and where statement. So here's the solution. So all we need to do is select, and then we can count the title from film where length is less than or equal to 50. And keep in mind, I don't necessarily need to count the title column. I could be counting anything there. So that could have been an asterisk as well. All right. So coming up next, we're going to keep talking about different SQL commands, starting with the between command. I'll see you there.